The love for Tyranids this week just really showed up. Thank you so much, Games Workshop, of course, for the new Raveners. And so in this video, we're going to take a look at the new Ravener datasheets that Games Workshop has released before the models are even available in stores. They're very, very strong. I'm very excited to include both versions of the Raveners, the Hyper Adapted and just the regular Raveners. So this video, I'm going to talk about all my thoughts on these units. I'm going to talk about some synergies, compare them to the old Raveners, see where they sit, and it's just going to be a great time. So hang out with me while we go through these new Raveners. Before we get into all of the combos and everything, just like an overview, zooming out, there's two different data sheets. So they've included regular Raveners and they've included hyper adapted Raveners. Two completely different units, but they function very similarly and they can even function together. It's very cool. However, both of them are 5 mans as the minimum sized unit. So comparing them to the old Raveners, you have to run 2 more. So it's going to be a little bit tougher to do, uppy, downy, deep strikey shenanigans. The footprint's going to be a little bit bigger, but otherwise they're very, very similar. Hyper adapted are character units. So there is going to be a lot of shenanigans you can pull with them just having the character keyword and being able to lead other Raveners, which is, turns out it's actually very, very strong when we look at the combos later on in this video. But both units are super cool, and they honestly might be my new favorite units, which I'm very happy because I was a huge Ravener fan before the new models came out, before we even knew the new rules on it. So I'm very excited and very happy that Games Workshop has created some really good units for our Tyranids. With the pre-orders just being announced for these incredible bugs, if you want to get them without having to, go through the terrible process that it is reloading the Games Workshop page or going into Warhammer stores, even though I love my local Warhammer store, if you want to avoid all of that and just for sure get your pre-order on the kill team that includes these Raveners, check out Secondhand Geek. All you need to do is go down to the description below, click our affiliate link, make sure you sign up through there, and then right below there's going to be a link that has this pre-order available for you. Just do those 2 things, sign up through Secondhand Geek and get your pre-order in. They're going to get you taken care of. You don't have to worry about Saturday morning, just refreshing the page until you can finally get that pre-order in. Secondhand Geek will take care of you, and it's going to support the channel a little bit. So shout out to Secondhand Geek for offering a phenomenal service, and a shout out to you getting some new Raveners. All right, here's the exact data sheet of the new baseline Raveners that Games Workshop has released on Warhammer Community. They move 10 inches, they're toughness 5, they're 4-up armor save. Notice there's no longer an option to take different ranged weapons, as opposed to you used to be able to take a ranged weapon and have a 5-up save instead of a 4-up save. I never did it. I just took the 4-up save just because when they're in cover, it is kind of, they're still going to die, but it was kind of helpful. Again, still T5, 3 wounds apiece, 8+ leadership, which is fine. And now the melee weapons. All right, it's Ravener, Claws, and Talons. Who would have thought, right? 3 attacks apiece, which is, we're going to talk about it, that's significantly less than the old Raveners. Old Raveners used to be 7 attacks apiece, but we're 3 attacks apiece, hitting on 3s, strength 5. Now here's the thing, AP2, 2 damage apiece. And I'm a big fan of AP2 versus AP1, which seems like a no-brainer thing to say, but the fact that Armor of Contempt exists, if you're AP1, then basically they just get their armor save. AP2 definitely still pushes that armor just a little bit further. And then 2 damage is, of course, twice the amount of damage that you're going to get from the old Raveners because they were damage 1. So we are actually going to do a little bit of math hammer to take a look at some of these things. The things that I found are very interesting, but we'll talk about that later. Last thing to talk about is they still have the uppy downy, or rather downy uppy for Raveners, because they burrow down and then they come back up, as somebody in the YouTube comments mentioned before. You're a legend, whoever that is. But they still have that rule, so that's very good. And in order to get wherever they want on the battlefield, if you're using subterranean assault, then you can create a whole bunch of burrows every single turn. It's a good time. And then on the bottom left, they've included their points. I'm pretty sure these are going to be the actual points when they come out in the app, when they're updated in the MFM. 125 points, and that makes sense because before the Raveners were 25 points apiece. For a 3-man, it's 75. For a 6, 150. And then it makes sense that a 5-man would be 125. Now here is the spice. Here's the hyper adapted Raveners. These guys are so cool. So we'll just break it down and talk about all of it. There's going to be 2 different profiles. Well, 3 if you count the ranged gun, but 2 different profiles. We have the Ravener Prime, who's the guy with like the little fin on his head. He's pretty cool. And then you have the regular Raveners. So the Ravener Prime is 10-inch move, T5, 4-up save, 6 wounds instead of 3, 7-up leadership, and then 1 OC, of course. Then the other Raveners are the exact same defensive profile and move as the other regular Raveners. So not too much to talk about that, except Ravener Prime having 6 wounds and a 7-up leadership. That's pretty cool. I don't mind it. The ranged weapon, only 1 Ravener in the squad gets this. It's Assault, Ignores Cover, and Torrent. So it's the little Venom sprayer that you see on that guy in the top right of the card. It's going to be D6 plus 3 attacks, Strength 6, AP 1, 1 damage. This is fine. Like, I mean, if somebody puts like a screen in front of your Raveners, there could be a chance where the Flamethrower guy just takes a couple of them out so that your charge gets a little bit easier. It can be a good time. And one thing I want to mention before we get in depth of the melee weapons is the Ravener Prime includes the Synapse keyword. And that's going to be very key because that means that everybody's strength in the melee profile is going to be actually +1. And it's also going to help other units around them. So it's very, very strong. So taking a look at their melee weapons, the Prime Claws and Talons, they're anti-monster, anti-vehicle, 5-up, and twin-linked. Very strong. So they're going to have 6 attacks apiece with just the Prime, remember. And then they're going to be hitting on 3s, Strength 5 up to Strength 6 because of Synapse, AP 2, Damage 2. So very, very similar, the same as the baseline Raveners, except that anti-monster, anti-vehicle 5-up. And then the regular Raveners, the rest of the squad, of course, still have the anti-monster, anti-vehicle 5-up, the twin-linked, 3 attacks apiece, hitting on 3s, and then Strength 6, remember, because Synapse, AP 2, and Damage 2. One thing I do want to mention, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more, the anti-monster, anti-vehicle 5-up, in my opinion, it doesn't actually come up that often unless you're activating into toughness 12 and above units, because you're going to be at Strength 6, so that means all the way up to toughness 11, you would be wounding on 5s regardless. And then at T12, it does help. I'm not gonna lie, that does help quite a bit in being able to re-roll all of your wound rolls. That is helpful. But the anti-vehicle 5-up it doesn't really make too much of a difference against other vehicles unless they get -1 to wound or whatever. Taking a look at their abilities, they do miss out on the Downy Uppy that the other Raveners have, but that's okay because they get sustained hits all the time. Very good. And they get Hypersensory Array, which this ability is just ridiculous. Once per battle round, you can target this unit with the Rapid Ingress or Heroic Intervention Stratagem for 0 CP. So that means you have to choose one or the other. That's at least how I'm reading it. And can do so even if you have already targeted a unit with that stratagem this turn. So that means if you have 3 of these units, you can Rapid Ingress 3 of them in 1 turn. Because you just do it. That's bananas. Same thing with Heroic Intervention. There's some really cool combos that we can pull off with Heroic Intervention. This is a very, very good unit. I'm incredibly excited about this unit. The last thing to mention is they can attach to the other Raveners. So you can have a 10-man Ravener squad, 5 of them with a hyper adapted, and then the other 5 just regular Raveners. So that means that they could just get back their Downy Uppy ability by being attached to the other unit because it just checks the unit, not the specific Raveners. And you can also give everybody sustained hits. So you can have 10 Raveners, Downy Uppying, sustained hits, twin linked, strength 6, AP 2, 2 damage. Woo! And this unit, last but not least to mention, is 165 points, which I think is very fairly pointed. I think this is a strong unit, but I don't think it's to the point where it's so efficient that it's going to immediately break the game. So before we talk about different combos and just other thoughts about these two units, I wanted to take a very quick snapshot of damage comparison to the new Raveners as well as the hyper-adapted Raveners to our old Raveners. So in thinking about all of this data, this is first taken from Unit Crunch, and I am saying that the old Raveners and the new regular Raveners are not in Synapse. The old Raveners are going to be a 6-man, and the new Raveners are just going to be the 5-man. So immediate things to think about: the old Raveners are going to be 25 points more than the new Raveners, and the old Raveners are going to have 42 attacks versus the 15 attacks of the new Raveners. So that's quite a bit of a difference, and we're going to kind of see that through the percentages of killing these units as well. And the hyper adaptive are just as is, just the 5-man, and they get all the buffs that they have. But intercessors, looking at this, the old Raveners is 6-man, 42 attacks. Remember, that's going to be 84% chance to take out that entire unit. It's pretty good. Then the new Raveners is a 5-man, 77% chance to take out the unit. And that might seem a little bit lower than the old Raveners, but you do have to remember that that's 15 attacks compared to 42 attacks, which is quite a bit less. So you are really seeing where the extra pip of AP and the extra point of damage comes in there really helps out that average. And then the hyper adapted 5-man is just going to be a 96% chance to eliminate the unit, which is very high and really where we want to be. Taking a look at the Terminators. Now, this is kind of where the data skews a little bit. Old Raveners, 6-man, they have a 7.8% chance to eliminate the Terminators, which is not, we're thinking we probably don't want to send in our Raveners into Terminators at that point. And then the new Raveners are going to have a 0.1% chance, or around there, to completely, 0 to 100 a 5-man brick of Terminators. So we're kind of understanding that the Raveners don't really want to activate into Terminators, so be careful with that. The hyper adapted are actually doing okay at a 10%, so maybe you want to whittle down the Terminators quite a bit before you just send Raveners into them. And of course, this is without any additional buffs besides their sustained or twin linked that they already have on their data sheets. So Terminator's probably not a good profile to throw our Raveners in. Now, the Rhino. This is interesting, and I think Rhinos are relevant because Tyranids don't like transports. We want to be able to pop the transports and then be able to get what's inside. So I think this is always a good data sheet to look at when we're comparing damages, especially for Tyranids. The old Raveners, the 6-man, are going to be 23% chance, around a quarter, to take out a Rhino. That's 42 attacks, remember. The new Raveners, only 15 attacks. That's going to be 30%, and that is definitely showing off the extra pip of AP and the extra damage. It's really nice. Hyper adapted. This is where it's pretty nice. With the sustained and the twin linked, it always comes up to around a 67% chance. And again, the anti-vehicle 5-up doesn't really come into effect at all because Rhinos being T9, hyper adapted are going to be strength 5 anyway, so they're going to be wounding on 5s. So it is again a weird key point for the anti-vehicle. Who knows? Well, so we know that Raveners are going to do okay into a Rhino. Hyper adapted is going to probably do a pretty good job into them. New Raveners, maybe not. Now taking a look at a Big Knight. I think I did Canis Rex, but whatever. They're all the same right now. Old Raveners, 6-man, is going to do around 3 wounds. The new Raveners are going to do around 3 wounds, and then the hyper adapted are also going to do around 3 to 4 wounds. It's okay. You don't really want to just throw a minimum sized unit into a Big Knight like this. They're not going to do great, and then they probably will die on the swing back. So take all of that into effect, and let's talk about those results that we got. All right, speaking on those results, and just a couple of reminders about the stats that I put in when figuring out those percentages and everything, is there's no synapse on either the old or new Raveners. I think synapse is pretty easy to put on them, especially if you're running a Neurotyrant. I'm running a Neurotyrant in most lists, but I did just want to see, like, bare bones how they activate into those different units. And next up, you have to consider there's 42 attacks with the old Ravener squad, the 6-man, versus 15 attacks with the new Raveners. So in my opinion, the fact that the new Raveners pretty much kept up in pace with the old Raveners, with only being 15 attacks, that's like a third basically of the old Raveners. That just really demonstrates how powerful an extra pip of AP and an extra pip of damage is when activating into different units. It's very strong. So in my opinion, I'm probably excited, and if I had a choice, I would take the AP2 and the damage 2 over AP1 and 1 damage. Because that means there's a higher chance of a swing for your opponent's armor save to be worse, and for each save that they fail, it's twice the damage that it would be for the old Raveners. I think it's pretty strong. In addition, we haven't taken into effect any buffs from any detachments or stratagems. So when you take in consideration that the MSU regular Raveners can easily get sustained or lethals in an invasion fleet, it's very strong, just obviously. Or surprise assault and Vanguard to help the 15 attacks just be a little bit more accurate. It's very good. Using surprise assault and Vanguard, of course, they get +1 to hit, and then a potential to get +1 to wound if your opponent fails their battle shock. Really pushes them up to a higher activation point. Last but not least, to wrap it up all in a nice little bow, the hyper adapted are better. They're just a better unit. They do kind of feel like they function a little bit differently unless you're attaching them with Raveners. They don't have the downy uppy rule that the Raveners have, but what you get for 40 points more, I think, is well worth it. It's kind of insane. You get the anti-monster, anti-vehicle 5-up. You get sustained hits from the character being in there. You get the free heroic, and you get the free rapid ingress, or rather you choose one of those. All of that for 40 points, and them having synapse. Yeah, I'll take it. I think that's a pretty good deal. Taking a closer look at just the hyper adapted, because they have a bunch of rules. So I just wanted to take a second to specifically talk about what they have going on. There's no downy uppy. You can't immediately bring them into deep strike every single turn unless you, of course, attach them with the regular Raveners. I think attaching them with the regular Raveners is probably a pretty good idea. Having a 10-man, however, that is a pretty large footprint, and it could be kind of tough to fit them. So when you're considering attaching them, take that into consideration and make sure that you're able to create space for them to deep strike. However, speaking of that, they can heroic and a rapid ingress for free. So the fact that you can, if you attach them, put them into deep strike, and then rapid ingress them again, it's pretty good. And then the heroic intervention seems pretty sweet too. We're going to talk about a couple of enhancements that the heroic intervention would help pretty nicely with this unit as well. Seems strong, and multiple rapid ingresses. You can have a couple of these just bing, bing, bing that happen all at once. In addition, the subterranean assault, the enhancement that allows for a free rapid ingress. That means you could also rapid ingress these guys and a Trigon in your opponent's turn to just really set up for a terrible wombo combo for your opponent next turn. So it could be very, very cool. Attached with the regular Raveners, this unit is going to demolish most things. The synapse is going to help the regular Raveners, of course, and in addition, they're going to get sustained hits as well. So sustained hits on 10 Ravener bodies with twin link, strength 6, AP2, 2 damage apiece. Oh my goodness. It's very, very strong. So I'm very excited to be running a 10-man and seeing where that lies. Again, the point where the footprint's going to be very big could kind of make them not as interesting as I'm thinking right now, but my first glance is I'm very excited to put 25, 30 of these guys on the board. It would be awesome. Another thing worth mentioning is why I think that this unit is so strong, because you don't have to lock in, okay, I'm running this 10-man Ravener squad. Because when you are deciding to deploy, that's when you decide whether you are attaching characters or not. So if you're going up against a matchup where you really value minimum sized units over just big bricks, then you could just say, okay, I'm not going to attach these 2 Ravener character units, and I'm just going to have 2 more 5-man MSU units running around. That is, I think, more powerful than people are thinking about or noticing. Just the versatility of being able to have 2 more units or 2 really big units really, really allows them to function as one of the best units in the codex, I think. Just having that adaptability. Oh, see what I did there? Having that adaptability within the unit and within your gameplay is very strong and a very neat trick. And it makes running 30 or 25 Raveners, which is probably where I'm going to start, truly strong, because you don't have to sacrifice the utility of minimum size units because you just decide to run them as minimum size units if you want to. 2 thumbs up, Games Workshop. These guys can have enhancements too, which is just bonkers. So let's take a look at a couple of enhancements that I thought go well with them. Looking at our enhancements, there's actually not too many that work incredibly well with them, except for a Simulation Swarm. Simulation Swarm enhancements just knock it out of the park with these guys. First up, Parasitic Biomorphology. That's going to put all of the Raveners in the unit at strength 7 instead of strength 6, so you immediately +1 strength. Strength 7 is a really good breaking point. There's a good amount of toughness 6 out there. I think Custodius is the first thing that comes to my mind. I think there's a lot of, I think Death Guard, their Terminators are baseline. Toughness 7, so hitting on 4 or wounding on 4s rather instead of 5s is pretty good. And then of course you get the potential for the +1 attack on each of them. And then if you do that, then you're like, I don't know, you're just living the dream, because that unit is going to just demolish everything. Next up, we have Regenerating Monstrosity. So this has the potential of you could regenerate and bring back 2 Raveners each turn. If you're able to keep that secondary Ravener squad alive, then that means you can just run around the board with a whole bunch of Raveners regenerating twice every single turn. Seems very strong in my opinion. And then Instinctive Defense. Remember, you are going to have to make sure that there's a Harvester unit around this unit just so that you can trigger that Fights First. However, you can Heroic for free using that enhancement, and then you can Fights First. So that doesn't use up that Heroic slot that is on the data sheet. So that's a different source of Heroic Intervention. So you can Heroic for free with that, and then Fights First. Very strong. So what you could do then is you can Rapid Ingress for free using their data sheet ability, and then with the enhancement you can Heroic for free as long as you're within 6 of the Harvester unit, and then you get to Fights First. The hard part about this is just the positioning. You have to make sure that there's a large Harvester unit like a Psychophage or something, so that you can continue to have the Fights First as well as the free Heroic. Excuse me. Next up, Elevated Might, the Warrior Onslaught detachment. Get them to advance and charge. Just simple, it's a pretty highly costed enhancement, but if you are running the Warrior Onslaught detachment, then these guys might be something interesting to have out there as just kind of like a early game threat, Rapid Ingress them to a point, and then just advance and charge them into whatever you want. Could be kind of a strong little scalpel unit to support your other warrior units. And then last but not least, Vanguard Intellect. This is in Subterranean Assault, of course, the new detachment. It allows you to bring them in turn 1 through Deep Strike. So if you have a good spot that you think that either you're going to bank a 9 on, or you're just going to create a tunnel and then have your Trigon that just went into reserves, you can bring these guys in turn 1 and then have a Trigon come out and then do a 6-inch charge. Yeah, seems pretty good. Some combos, and I think a lot of these combos are pretty self-explanatory, just the number of attacks, the twin linked and everything. It kind of just shows them, but let's talk through a couple in case they're worth mentioning. Invasion Fleet. Of course, you can do it lethals, and if you're with the hyper adaptive, then you get sustained and lethals, and then of course Adrenal Surge is going to really help that too. So you get exploding or lethals or both on 5s, and then with twin linked you're going to have quite a bit of attacks, and then really allowing for just a bunch of damage coming at your opponent. Then Vanguard Onslaught, advanced and charge, of course. They still kept the Vanguard Invader keyword, which is wonderful. Then using Surprise Assault, they're going to hit on 2s, and then the potential of a +1 to wound as well. Comboed with Twin Linked is a really nice activation for this unit. Synaptic Nexus, something we talked about. These units are Synapse. So they're, the detachment rule for Synaptic Nexus is kind of relevant for these guys. You can get +1 to hit, Irresistible Will, so you can combo +1 to hit as long as you're in that imperative, and then Irresistible Will, you can reroll 1s to hit and wound with them. Well, I guess not wound, you're going to be twin linked anyways. In addition, you have the 5-up Invulnerable save, which is not nothing, That's pretty good. I like 5 up involts. And then last but not least in Synaptic Nexus, being able to fall back, shoot that flamer, I guess, and then charge is pretty strong as well. Assimilation Swarm, we talked about a bunch of their enhancements. I'm actually kind of like, some of those enhancements are very good for these guys. So I think it's definitely worth considering having like a 10-man brick of Raveners in Assimilation Swarm. It's just kind of like going wherever they can on the field and just taking out a unit there or whatever, and then regrowing or just having a bunch of strength 7 attacks. Seems very, very strong. And then Subterranean Assault, of course, just movement shenanigans. They kind of allow the detachment to function by being like a smaller unit besides the Trigons and the Molochs. So they're, I don't want to say no-brainer, but you're going to run Raveners if you're running Subterranean Assault. And then these guys being able to get a 6-inch charge if possible. You pop up a Moloch as the 9-inch away, create the tunnel, and then you have a big 10-man Ravener unit that drops down and is going to 6-inch charge. Yeah, that sounds good, folks. I really like the idea of that. Some example list that I've been working on, been thinking about. Of course, these might shift a little bit. I think that the Raveners are pretty accurately point costed. I would be surprised if they bump them. Maybe they bump them up just a little bit. Especially the hyper adapted, if they go up to like 180 or something, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have so much shock and awe. But I feel like the points that are listed on the datasheet cards are probably going to be pretty accurate. So this first list that I'm looking at is my Subterranean Assault list that I'm very excited to try. And the characters, I'm going to have 2 Neurotyrants, one of the Neurotyrants with Tremor Sense, so that we can redeploy and maybe put, some Zoanthropes in reserve turn 1. If you haven't heard me talk about the Zoanthrope combo and Subterranean Assault, go check out that detachment deep dive. It's very strong, by the way. Then after that, we have a Trigon Prime, and then we have 2 hyper-adapted Raveners. It's kind of weird having them in the character slot, but that's where they are. In my battle line, we have 2 Hormagaunts. I wanted a 3rd Lictor, but there might be a case where I dropped my 3rd Lictor to put both of these guys as Gargoyles. You know me, I really love my Gargoyles. But I'm going to start trying with 2 Hormagaunts as opposed to 2 Gargoyles. Who knows? I might immediately change that. In the other data sheets, I have a Biovore. I have triple Lictor, like I discussed before. 3 of the regular Raveners. An additional Trigon, just to kind of be a nuisance to the board. And then 2 6-man Zoanthropes. The Zoanthropes are very strong in this detachment. I'm very excited to try this list out. I think it's quite powerful. I think it has some really, really good potential. It can be devastating for your opponent. Second list is kind of spicy. It is Vanguard Onslaught, one of my true loves. And let's take a look at it. So I've shifted my normal Vanguard Onslaught list. We're no longer running melee warriors. I just really don't think there's a need to run any melee warriors with the new Raveners out. You just run the Raveners instead. But in characters, we have 2 Broodlords, one with Neuronode and one with Stalker. Stalker, I don't think is a need. You can get rid of that and you can change it out for, I don't know, if you feel like there's an upgrade, maybe switching a Lictor to be Von Rhines. There's a discussion to be had there. But anyways, we have 1 Neurotyrant, and then we have 2 hyper-adapted. And then we have Winged Hive Tyrant. I believe he has Chameleonic as well. Pretty strong. I like the Winged Hive Tyrant. He dropped quite a bit in points after the CP change. And I'll probably do a video on the command point change for Hive Tyrants. I don't really think I'm going to be missing twice a turn. I think it's just going to make me think a little bit more about when I use the Will of the Hive Mind ability, but I genuinely don't think I'm going to be too upset by that change. Anyways, we have 1 squad of Gargoyles. Then moving on to other data sheets, we have a Biovore, 2 10-man Gene Stealers, just because I feel like you still want kind of that early game pressure that the Gene Stealers are going to allow for you to have. Then we have 3 Lictors, because in Vanguard Onslaught, I just think they're pretty strong. Then we have triple of the regular Raveners, so we can uppy downy, do some cool things, attach or not attach to the hyper adapted Raveners. Who knows? And then last but not least, we have a 6-man Zoanthrope squad, just to make sure we have some kind of shooting. And they are, of course, going to be able to uppy downy and go around the field if we want to get some really cool angles. One thing to note is no Death Leaper in this list. I do really like the Death Leaper, so there is a point where maybe we swap out the Gargoyles for Death Leaper. I don't know. I still feel like Gargoyles are a very strong unit to have. So my first inclination is to make sure that I have gargoyles as opposed to not. But let me know what you think about the subterranean assault list and the Vanguard onslaught list. In addition, let me know if you think the Raveners are going to go up in points once they are, quote unquote, fully released. Who knows? All right, everybody, those are my thoughts on our new Raveners. What do you think? Comment, like, subscribe if you agree with my thoughts. If there's any combos that I missed, or if you think there's anything worth adding to the discussion, I would love to hear it down in the comments below. Don't forget, pre-orders are out. So check out Secondhand Geek, click that affiliate link, and then get your pre-order in. It's going to help you get these Raveners efficiently, and it's going to give a little bit of kickback to the channel as well. As always, I appreciate you guys watching so much. Thank you for the support, and I'll see you Wednesday. Bye.